you spray to avoid any contamination. So you want to, if you're going to spray, let people know that, hey, I spray here, or even if you put a little band to mark off where you spray to prevent anybody intruding that area. And then you always allow the re-entry intervals. If they say re-entry interval is 24 hours, you wait 24 hours before you go back in that area. Then there's always good to monitor the pre-harvest intervals also. Pre-harvest intervals is when they said you could use anyone you harvest 3 to 5 days after you spray. You make sure you always adhere to that because you don't want to put anybody's lives at risk if you're going to pick it before. So if you know you want to spray tomorrow, you go in this afternoon, you pick all the mature fruits, and then you go in tomorrow and you spray. So 3 to 5 days after, then you could pick more fruits again for harvest to sell. You don't want to pick before that because the pesticide residue could be on the fruit still, or especially on leafy vegetables like the kale and the callaloo and the pak chai. You really want to adhere to those rules when you have dealing with those leafy vegetables. Records. This is very important to keep records when you spray. So if there's an outbreak, you must be able to go back to your records. Okay, I did spray this. This probably is the cause of it. If somebody to fall ill after you spray, like say somebody fall ill 2 days after, if you don't keep a record as to what you spray, you don't know what caused them to fall ill. So it's always good to keep a record as what you do. It's always good. So it comes for traceability. You're always able to trace back. That's why sometimes when the US have a recall for lettuce, it's because they keep records. You can say, okay, this batch of lettuce had a problem, they recall that batch because you keep records. If you don't keep no record, you can't do that. Because you can't say, pull all the lettuce off the shelf. That'll be wasting your money. But if you could say, pull this batch, it's more because of control. So it's always good to keep records. I'll be trying to tell the farmers, keep a record, keep a record. But it's important to keep records. And then when you keep records, you know what you did last time. You could do it again for the most effective control of whatever you're trying to control. So it's important to keep records, not for only the extension purpose, but for the farmer himself. To keep that record is to know, okay, I did this last year, it worked fine, I will do it again. So you understand, if you keep the record, it's always good as a reference point. Integrated pest management. This is where you try to control the pests, and you use every other method, and chemical is your last resort. So that comes with your cultural practices, you're controlling your weeds, because weeds have alternate, the pest could be, the weeds could be an alternate host for the pest. So you want to control your weeds, control your sanitation. If you plant tomatoes last year, you want to pick up all the residue, because some of these pests could overwinter on the crop residue. So when you plant a new crop, they're like, okay, ready. You jump back on them again. So although you had control on the previous crop, because you didn't get rid of the residue, you actually send it over to the new plants. It's always good to make sure your surroundings are clean and agricultural practices are always on point. And next thing you want to make sure your spacing is right. If your spacing is right with the plants, you prevent crowding, overcrowding, you allow air to pass through, and you prevent pests like aphids and whiteflies, but usually attack the plant when it's too overcrowding and not enough air passing through. These are some of the common pests found in Anguilla. They're not in no specific order. It's just the pests that affect the farmers most in Anguilla. There's whiteflies on your extreme right. There's a spider mite on your left. This is a Spodoptera larva. And then there's an aphid on the other side. Whiteflies again, this is Hemiptera. It's from the order Hemiptera. And what it usually does is it sucks the sap of the plant and cause bronzing on the leaves. So when you find the plant start to look paley, this whitefly is probably sucking it. What it usually do also, it gives off a honeydew. And that honeydew attracts a secondary infection called sooty mole. It's a fungus, so the plant usually get black. But the primary cause of it is this whitefly. So actually, most of the sucking insect cause it, like whiteflies, aphids, they could give off that honeydew. And when you get a honeydew, you get sooty mole, which is a secondary disease, which is a fungal. Aphids, this is one we're talking about just now. This also give off the honeydew, with this the kind of sap that causes sooty mole. Yeah, I didn't hear you. Yeah, I think most of it's insects, yeah. This is strips. It's basically a tiny insect. It's basically microscopic. You can't see with your naked eyes unless you have it on. You have a clear white piece of paper and you shake it. You may see a little small yellow stuff on it. That's if it would. But that's trips. The way you could identify if you have trips, it actually causes curling of the new leaf. Yeah, trips cause curling of the new leaves. So that's how you know you have trips. Once you see curling of your young leaf, you know you have trips affecting it. This is leaf minor. Back home we call it Chinese writing. You remember that? Yeah, but we call it Chinese writing back home, but it's leaf minor. It's basically a little Lepidopter larva traveling through the two leaf sheets of the plant and eating on the inside. So you get this, once it eats, it burrows its way through, and you get this kind of marking. So we call it Chinese writing back home. This is flea beetles. This usually affects, is a coleoptera. It usually affects tomatoes, eggplants. What it causes is shotty holes in the leaf. So you see the leaf with a lot of fine holes. It's flea beetles cause it. So it actually eats the leaf and causes a lot of little holes in it. And once it eats the leaves, it affects the photosynthesis activity of the plant. The exuras? Yeah, but that wasn't flea beetle. It was a beetle also, but it wasn't the flea beetle. There was a beetle. That was the Asian longhorn beetle. Yeah, the Asian longhorn. Yeah. Mites or spider mites. This is also found on the side of the leaves, and they're usually suck the sap of the plant. So also of economic importance, and it also causes bronzing of the leaves. So when you see the leaves looking kind of bronzish looking color, it's spider mites. It usually affect the orchards like the avocados. It's very bad in avocados. It stings the fruit. And when it stings the fruit, it causes discoloration. And that discoloration, that particular area kind of gets sour. I don't know what the toxin it puts in, but the fruit usually gets sour whenever the sting bug. But you see some little lighter color on the fruit, that's usually sting bug damage. And it usually comes in when the plant is starting to get pretty old, when it started mature, when it's over maturity, it started to get that. This is tomato hornworm, and they're very destructive because they actually go into and damage the fruit. So they're very destructive. It's like this some again. This is in the early stage when they're eating the leaves. How you know you have them? If you go under the tree, you see some little frass, some little green poop. It could be called frass. That's how you know they're present. So if you walk from scouting, you go walking under the tree, you would actually see their little poop under the tree. That's a corn earworm. That's very destructive also for corn production. What it actually does is it goes down in the kernel and eats the corn seed. So when you pick the corn and you think you got a nice full corn, you'll realize it's only half you got because the corn earworm already damaged the corn. So it's very destructive also. So this is there eating the corn. This is the army worm, Spodoptera frugiporta. That's also very destructive, and it comes on whenever we get a lush growth, green growth. So after the rains, and you get a nice fresh green growth, you get Spodoptera frugiporta. This is the mother, the adult mother actually causes the worm. That's it. And that's the end of it. So any questions?
Worms buried in the ground. How do you do it? Just kill them?
Yeah, you could kill them, but most of the time those worms is not really affecting the corn. They are cut worms. They would cut the corn right off. They wouldn't affect the corn itself, the whole tree. They would just cut the tree off. We call them cut worms.
And the first time I found out that worms were cutting down leaves, I planted large pieces and not one being sprouted. Everyone was cut down by the worms.
Is that cut worm? Could they cut worm or could they cricket? The cricket does that too.
Yeah. Now, old people used to say that when you find the worms in the corn, throw some dirt on it. Is that helpful or this is old time? Old?
Ash. That's the ash will do. What it is, we find is smaller the worm.
Yeah.
So they want to put some ash on it. Because what
Okay, I don't want to hog the thing. Just one more question. Take like you got kale. The worms infested, and within a few days, it's like a dry stalk.
That's it's the same time about heart.
Yeah.
Actually damage the kale. And as I tell you, it's one of the most difficult pest to control in Angola because of its wide host range, things things you eat. So it's very difficult. If you let's say you have kale and you cut down all those kale, it's okay, I'm not doing anything for kale. That means where these butterflies disappear, these moths disappear. They're gonna find something other thing because they're not a host, are gonna give them some food until you plant kale again. Because of a wide host range. That's what the bad part of this, about a wide host range. Even if you don't have it's before host, it's an alternate host that's going to jump on it until you plant back what you need.
Okay, one last question, and I'll let somebody else ask the questions. Now, take, for example, you find that some of these pests get on the leaves of the plant. I mean, if you spray, the sprayer doesn't touch them.
Yes, that's why sometimes it depends on the pest you trying to control. You got to select the appropriate insecticide or pesticide that you use. If the pest is a sucking pest, it sucks the sap of the plant, then it's best to use systemic insecticide. And I mean, you don't have to touch it. You don't have to do it. That's only contact it. Once you spray the plant, it's going to go through this little vessel. Once he sucks the sap, he's going to die. It all depends on what you control. If you see a high infestation of worms and you want to fast knock down, and you go to the sprayer, but once you touch them, if it's a karate, it's going to kill them. But if you want to have a total control, then you have to use a systemic. The thing about a systemic, it waits like 2 or 3 days before it actually acts because it has to go through the system of the plant. If it's a contact, once it touches the pest, it's going to kill them. So there's a difference, like not even an infestation. If you've got a high infestation, you want to go with a contact, and that's knocking them all the time. If it's not that high, you could do something systemic. Okay. It all depends on what you want to control.
Okay.
And the stage of infestation.
I have to ask a final question, and I'll give you everything. Now, how long should you wait before you can utilize the plant? Let's say like kale, if you spray it, or cabbage, how long you have to wait before you can?
Well, again, it all depends on the pesticide you use. Each pesticide has a pre-harvest interval. But the general term is mostly 3 to 5 days. Most of them is 3 to 5 days. But some may, with a higher concentration, they may say 7 days or 10 days. So that's why it's always important to read the label and know what you're spraying. But if they say 3 to 5 days, you wait 5 days before you actually harvest again. Especially leafy vegetables, where it's actually used in the raw stage. You want to make sure you adhere to the pre-harvest intervals.
Okay, let somebody. I have some more questions to ask.
But you could ask them when you're ready.
Ask a question, Mr.
Oh, okay. No, I told you about it. I had an avocado tree, and I noticed that the leaves are turning brown. And sometimes you got a lot of flowers, they all drop, and suddenly you may just get about 2 avocados from it. But this time I haven't seen the flowers or anything. And it's breaking out on the branches are drying up on the top first, coming down. Is there any way, you gave me something to use, but I think
I mentioned, I was by you and I saw that most times it's a fungal disease and it's causing the plant to die back from the top coming down. Sometimes it also could be termites also in the stem, but when I checked yours, there was no termites. So I still believe it's a fungal disease and it's causing the dieback of the tips coming down.
Because when I had told somebody about the avocado tree, and I was told that it would do, no, first of all, blooming, man, beautiful coming up, and then all of a sudden it started drying from the top and
it's a fungal disease. It's a fungal disease. Most time they recommend you to cut and burn the residue, but we don't always do that. But it should be you should cut and burn. And sometimes one of your early question where the plant only hold 2 of the fruits instead of all the flowers that come out on the plant. It could be that there's not enough moisture in the root zone, so the plant is in survival mode. It will not keep all those fruits. It's like if you got a pig and she dropped 10 piglets. If she don't have milk for 10 piglets, survival of the fittest. Only 6 may survive. The other 4 may die. So it's the same thing with the plant. If there's not enough moisture to sustain 100 fruits, it would not keep 100 fruits. It would just abort those flowers. Or even if they turn to little fruits, it would just drop them off and just hold what the plant could manage.
And the same thing is happening to my mango tree. Last year they had a lot of mangoes, and this year, nothing.
Yeah, it all depends on the amount of rainfall we get too. If we get a lot of rainfall, the plants do, especially the plants, the orchid plants, they do much better as compared to if you don't have a lot of rainfall. So it all depends on if it's a wet year or a dry year. So that's how the fruits come. If it's a wet year, you get a lot of fruits. If it's a dry year, your fruit numbers tend to decrease. It happens with us here too. Sometimes in the department, the mango trees bear so good, and the next time they don't bear good because of the amount of moisture they get.
Okay, I'm going to hold off for now.
Yeah, but it's always good to because we tend to, when you do, because it's fruit trees, you plant them and you don't get them the amount of water and nutrients they need, but they all need water and nutrients just like the little small plants, the cash crops. But we don't pay them enough attention. But then we want them to bear just like everything else. No, they need some fertilizer, they need some water periodically to help them to nourish themselves and hold the fruits when they do put on flowers.
And then I have another mango tree above the house. It bore, one year had about 3. One for me, one for Cynthia and somebody else. The next year it had about 4. And they're growing up tall, it's over the roof of the house. Should I cut off the top or something?
If you cut the top, what's going to happen? The plant is going to spread wider because you're cutting the apical dominance. So you're going to increase the plant. Sorry. Run the call you back. Yeah. Sorry about that.
When that plant needs sun.
Yeah, sometimes if the plant needs sunlight, it also will try to grow as much as possible to get the sunlight. But in his case, it's on the eastern side of the house, so it's getting the sunlight. But sometimes if you want to cut back the apical dominance, you just cut the top off, and then it will spread much wider. Because you're cutting the apical dominance. Okay. Most of the times, if you get a plant that grows from seed, it has natural apical dominance. If you get a graft now, it actually spreads this way because it's the stem you're using to actually spread wide instead of going up. So, but if you want a grafted tree to go up, you got to select one of those little stems that's growing with apical dominance, and you train that to go up by keep cutting some of the ones that are going horizontal.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Rhodes. I understand the fact that you have to use pesticides for the varying organisms and such.
Yeah.
I am an organic farmer. I use no pesticides.
Okay, that's lovely.
I use my own little concoction, but I know you have to probably use it more often, but it's natural things.
Okay.
Can you suggest any other natural things that can be used other than pesticides?
You could use the neem.
Yes, I have that.
The neem is very good because neem have various properties. It could actually act as a repellent and it acts as a control also. So neem is one of the best. You could use vinegar. You could use some plants that are actually naturally going to repel pests, like some of the herbs, like chives. If you plant chives as a barrier crop, it actually repel pests from coming to your crops.
Oh,
garlic, yeah, chives work, garlic work also. Yeah. So all those are plants that repel pests if you don't want to use any pesticide. But for the safest biological pesticide you could use is neem. Yeah. And because it's plant-based, yeah.
Well, thank you. I seem to be doing the right thing. I have here my, I
So you
use,
call it a botanical pesticide.
just for the others, I use cayenne pepper, garlic, vinegar, the dish liquid.
Yeah, but this liquid actually does it acts as a spreader, sticker. It helps
Yes,
to the stuff
yes,
to hold
yes.
on to the plant.
And the name as well, you know,
Yeah.
so.
The thing about using those remedies, you just have to be mindful as to the quantities that you use them because
Yes.
there's no recommended set dosage. So you have to be
Yes.
careful.
Yes.
So if it's a seedling you're dealing with, you don't want to make sure you don't put too much to burn the seedling. So you always got to be careful as to how you use it because there's no set recommendation as to how much and quantities to use. Yeah. The neem, it all depends on what you do. If you get the neem leaves and you boil it and get the water out, you could use that at a very high rate because it's not that potent. If you use the seed and you get a press and get an oil from it, that's very potent. That now you could use at a lower dose. That because that's the oil, that's the concentrate in the seed. That's the acidirectrin. That's the active ingredient in the neem. So if you're using the neem seed, you could use a lower dosage. If you're using the leaves, it could be at a higher dosage because it's weaker as compared to the seed to get the oil from the seed. Well, it's basically like boiling it. You're basically getting the sap out of the leaves. But I'm not sure. What I know for sure, what the leaf does is act more as a repellent, and not as compared to the seeds, out from the seed, what as a control. So there's two different things. One is keeping the pest out of the area, and one is controlling the pest if the pest is there. So it's two different scenarios. Yeah, but the seeds is much better. Mm-hmm. Yellow dad. To be honest, I heard some stories about yellow dad, but I'm not sure what's the use of yellow dad. I know it's a pest. It's a pest for plants, so, but I'm not sure of any beneficial use of the yellow dad. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now it's gone? Well, that's good. You get the control because it's very difficult to control. 'Cause even if the sap from the leaf or on the plant gets on something, it grows. It grows. A new plant grows. They're very destructive. I don't really like them.
Okay.
No, what she's saying, she's just trying to get it control.
Destroy them.
Yeah.
No, you destroy them because they're dangerous to the plant.
Yeah, they're very difficult to control also.
I know that could be a parasite.
Yes, a parasitic plant.
You got a spike for your neighbor who did this something, you then take a few pieces.
That's not nice.
No, this is what just happened.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Roach, can you name some of the symptoms that when plants are lacking varying nutrients? Sometimes you see the leaves are drying down, you know, they're turning yellow, you know, what nutrients are they lacking?
Actually, it could be a combination of nutrients. If you because a lot of the nutrients have similar symptoms. So let's say if you see a plant looking kind of yellow, the leaves looking kind of yellow, it could be an iron deficiency, it could be a nitrogen deficiency. So it all depends on which one. The nitrogen one, you could see it start to go from yellow from the veins and go out. The iron is from the leaf blade and come in, but you have to know when it starts to detect that. So it's very similar, but you have to know. You have to do some reading before you know which one the nutrients is actually lacking. Sometimes it don't actually be nutrients lacking also. It could be lack of moisture. If you're not getting enough water, the plant going to start to wither and die. It could be a pest under the leaves, so you have to go and scout it. Because if you're going to look on the leaf and you realize there's some pest sucking the sap, the leaf's going to get yellow after a while. So it could be a pest. It could be a pest infestation. It could be lack of moisture. It could be a lack of nutrient. It could be so many things, and when the symptoms look the same way. So it all depends on how you scout And you knowing your plant and how it reacts, you would know what is actually missing sometimes.
Another question. I'm just starting a dragon fruit.
The dragon fruit, okay.
Yes, and I've noticed that there is a very large flower and there's a very small flower. I know on a pumpkin tree there's a man and a woman. I now can identify what is a man and what is a woman. But I cannot to like pollinate it myself if there are no bees also around.
Actually,
I don't know, what to do, whether the small flower is the one you put into the large flower or whatever.
there's like two types of dragon fruit that I know. There's one that's self-pollinating, and there's another one that is cross-pollinating. The one that's cross-pollinating, they use a bat. It's a bat. The fly by night actually does the pollination. The thing is that we don't have that bat in Anguilla because it's not a native to Anguilla. We brought in that fruit to Anguilla. So what you have to do is go and pollinate it yourself by getting a little brush and taking out the pollen from one flower. And usually it'd be a flower from another plant somewhere else that somebody have, because you basically wouldn't have that same plant in your yard. So you got to find somebody who have a next tree that is compatible, take off the pollen from that, and then come pollinate your flower, which is a little tedious and a little difficult because it got to be an exact timing. It can't be done during the day. It got to be in the afternoons or early morning or during the night. It won't happen during the day because by the time if you get it like by 10 o'clock in the day, it's too late. It has to be the kind of the flowers open at night. So you have to go to like about 6 in the afternoon, get that pollen, and then go pollinate it. It's a little tedious process. But if you're trained and you know what to do, you could take off the pollen and store it in the fridge. So when you see the next flower open, you just go down and do it. But you have to be trained to do it. But because we don't have that bat that actually does the pollination during the night, we have to do it ourselves. It's like you pollinating the pumpkin. If there's not enough bees, something like that, yeah.
Thank you. I'll give someone else a chance.
Anybody, you want the mic? Do you want the mic or you good?
I think he needs it to project to the camera.
Okay.
Pomegranate. I had about few pomegranate, and one of them had bear beautiful a lot. But then the hurricane came and destroyed that.
Okay.
And it was 5 in other hand, and that way. But after that, the others were leaves. I don't know why they didn't bear it. I put fertilizer, on it, and I throw water, but I don't know what happened. The tree just there, not bearing.
But the tree reaches maturity. They all was the same age.
Yeah.
Oh, that's strange.
The one by the greenhouse there, I see one fruit come out there, and they're there for a while, and the other one there, not bearing.
It could be there's not much moisture. There could be not enough soil in the area. There could be a combination of stuff that would cause a tree not to bear. Sometimes the tree would put on flowers, and then it would abort those flowers because the amount of nutrients to sustain those fruits is not there. It all depends. It could be a combination of stuff. But there's no way a tree would just be growing without something else is wrong. Why is it not growing?
There's a,
Something physiological. Could be something not enough soil, not enough moisture. Could be many reasons. But I'll come and take a look at it.
yeah, I would be glad. I would glad.
I'll tell you offhand what is.
Yeah, it's just there, taking up space, and I don't have the room for nothing non-productive. I don't have room for that.
I could run to the next presentation. It should be pretty quick. That one's post-harvest management. It's a little technical, but I think we should pretty good. Post-harvest management. Basically, fruits and vegetables are a major source of micronutrients to humans. But after harvesting, the fruits and vegetables start to deteriorate immediately because they cut from their food supply. So once you cut from the plant, it starts to deteriorate. The cells start just natural. Natural plant. Will start. Want to separate from the plant. So the pre-harvest interval should be adhered to when you do pesticide. And that's one of the as well also called distribution. If they say you harvest at this time, harvest at that time. You want to adhere to it. Is the label irregular? This is really good.
That's the presentation I see on it.
Keep going. Okay, good. Right. Okay. So if it's at the harvest 3 to 5 days, make sure you harvest 3 to 5 days. Most of the labels of pesticide that we use with the 0 days is the harvest is the green label. So if you see pesticide with a green label, it's mostly at 0 days to harvest. I mean you could spray today and you could harvest it.
What?
But most that would be a biological. You let a
Name, oh.
neem people do it because it's a plant based.
It's plant-based.
So you could use a plant based stuff. Okay. Pesticide includes herbicides. I don't want to do that. I need to go see that. Okay, go back there. The misuse of these pesticides or the lack of knowledge cause a problem for the applicator. And you know what to do if there's a problem arises. Training is always important. Right? So there's some non-chemical control of pesticide that the nurse was asking. So you could use, this just means control the pest without the use of pesticide. So we use a sex pheromone trap. So it's basically using the potato weevil where you set a pheromone out in the field and you have the pheromone mimic the scent of a female and will attract the males to the pheromone in the trap and it's going to kill them. So you have sex pheromone. So efficacy, you want to control the females. You want to make them sterile, you put out the pheromone that scent that a male is going to attract the female bird. And when they come here, they're going to stick on the trap and they're going to die. Or they'll fall in a pit. A pit is basically a area with some water. So when they move over it, they send them dropping into it, and then they're going to die. They're going to basically a bioinsecticide is actually neem, not neem, BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, taking some cannabinoids, diaper, Bacillus thuringiensis, and that's BT. Non-chemical control again. So this is the use of oils, extracts, which are recommended in the crop production, especially when the plants are in the reproductive phase. So if your plant is fruiting, you want to make sure you minimize the use of any harsh pesticide for it. So that's why you want to use something non-toxic. This is important to ensure the safety of the consumer when the product arrives to the market for sale. So the neem oil, the garlic oil are examples to use to control any pest in the area. We're going to protect the consumer in the market. So the reducing of post-harvest loss in the fields is of pesticide verticals, which is the development activity that the plant and the fruit undergo after it's harvested. So you get ripening, which is the sequence or the change of the produce after it is harvested. So to prolong the shelf life, you want to make sure your techniques are in sync with protecting this fruit. So you want to make sure whatever you do, you want to keep the conditions as close as possible to in-field. So you want to make sure the temperature is right. If you transport it, you want to make sure you pack them right, because if you pack them bad, you're going to go each other and damage it. That's what you don't want. Like, if you get to the market, you're going to lose quality of the food. So your packaging is very important. See how this package here? This is not good. You see all those little green stems? When the tomato turn, it's going to puncture the other food. So this is bad packaging. And some of this will be too much in one packet because compression, you don't want that also. Because the top going to be fine, but once the two little bottom layers, it's going to be crushed. So you got to be careful how much you put and how you put them in the packet. So the packing is very important for transport. Sometimes you will usually have tomatoes bought on a ship. The skin is very thick. We don't like those because it tastes like cardboard, but actually they're shipping tomatoes. They buy them, they grow them to ship them out. So they wouldn't be the best for us, but because they're shipping them, we get that. So that's why it's good to use the local stuff because we're going to have the nice, fresh, juicy stuff. Whereas the one ship, because they don't ship it, they're going to grow up variety, they're going to take shipping. It's going to be a much tougher variety. Cutting it, the skin is very thick. And you actually feel that it's not as tasty as compared to the local ones. So the reduction in post-harvest losses is careful handling and transporting of fruit and vegetables. This will reduce the loss and improve the shelf life of the produce. The use of some chemicals in fruits and vegetables after harvesting to reduce damage by microbes. This is be sprayed when you harvest. You spray them with a chemical to avoid pest damage during transport. Or that's for instance in the grain industry, like the paddy. What are you using paddy in the paddy industry? They use the neem. They pack some neem in the bags, between the bags, and there's no paddy bug. That's just a way of controlling the pest without affecting the quality of the fruit or the product. In the part industry, they use mancozeb, which is 80% vegetable powder, to control anthrax. Because if you don't use a mancozeb, anthrax will damage the papayas. You find a little sunken hole in the fruit, that's anthrax. It happens in mangoes and bananas also. You get anthrax damage.
So that's where it can be black stuff that you see falling on the fruits afterward.
Yes, it's an anthrax nose. So actually, using mancozeb is a fungicide. You spray, and then it controls the anthrax. So you're actually controlling the pest before you actually see it, because it's the fungus, it's there, but you have to spray before you actually see the damage. So that preventative measure. So this is quality control. After you pick the fruit, you want to be able to reduce the field heat. So if you pick it, you want to get it into a cool area to reduce the field heat. It's going to increase the shelf life of the fruit. So you want to drop the field temperature as quick as possible. So maybe people use some cold water to run over the fruit. If it's too cold, it will damage the process. So you want to get it at a nice, good temperature. And the fruit size depends on the market, what the market wants. If the market wants a large fruit, then the farmer has to go large. So that depends on what the market wants. The fruit maturity. Sometimes the market wants so that's a turning tomato. Some want a fine ripe tomato. That depends on what the market wants. At the same time, sometimes what the market wants could be detrimental to the farmer, because if you leave the fruit still fine ripe, it actually takes more out of that tree to have the fruit fine ripe. So sometimes what the market wants is not good for the farmer for production, because he's going to be losing. The longer the fruit stay on the tree, the longer it takes to put out new flowers to bring a new fruit. So all that time the farmer is losing because he's still watering the plant. But then it's market preference. Then the flavor. If the market wants a very sweet fruit, then the farmer will cut off his water supply at least 2 weeks before the fruit ripens. That now going to reduce the amount of product you get from that particular plant. You can cut the water supply. Because the fruits can start, because some will get flowers in the first 12 weeks, then another flower will come out in that 15 weeks, then some will come out in 18 weeks. And if you cut out the water to control the sugar content in the forest fruit, that means the ones that come out after, they don't be the full potential. So all depends what the consumer wants, but the farmers end up feeling that loss. But going to go again, say temperature management, bring your temperature down, I spoke about that. It has a direct influence on the shelf life. If the temperature is too high, the food's going to be dirty. If the temperature is too low, it's going to be dirty. It's not going to be optimum temperature to increase the shelf life of the fruit. So temperatures have a big influence on it. It also affects the quality and the growth of spoilage microbes. If the temperature is too high, you get spoilage microbes going to grow right there on that because that's the environment conducive to them. So that's why that you drop the temperature just to control those microbes. High temperature in field also cause severe damage and stress to the fruit of the plants. So if the temperature is too high and you pick the fruit in a high temperature, the stress to that plant is not good. So we recommend you harvest in the afternoon or in the morning as compared to during the day and night temperature. Because I always recommend avoid harvesting in the heat of the day. It's also important to reduce the feed heat, like I said that before. By reducing feed heat, we reduce spoilage, which reduces the loss and damage to microbes. Heat treatment. Heat treatment is basically a way of controlling any pest in the crop or in the fruit before it actually gets to the market. So what in the mango industry, if there's a mango seed beetle, and to control the mango seed beetle, you have to run the mango through some hot water before it actually gets to the market. In the US, because the US knows there's a mango seed beetle in the Caribbean, if you want to sell mangoes to the US, they recommend a heat treatment. Run it through some warm water before it gets to the US. Once it gets to warm water, it's going to kill the beetle in the seed. So that depends on what is the pest risk of the importing country. They would recommend that you do follow these steps before you be able to sell to the market. It's going to be an extra cost on the supplier, the producer. But if your client wants this, you have to do it because they want it and you want to sell it. So you have to meet their standards. It's going to cost you. It's always important to make sure you have a pest-free zone. If you have a pest-free zone, you could say, okay, I'm pest-free. You could send somebody to a pest analysis, and then good, you meet the market standards. So it's always recommended to make sure your area is pest-free so you can be able to access the market. It's very important to be pest-free so you can access the market. Again, you can see blanching, which actually inactivates some of the deteriorating enzymes. It maintains freshness and color. It stabilizes texture and nutrient, and then it's actually sterilized. So, as I said, when the mango seed beetle actually sterilize it.
But what is the meaning of blanching?
Blanching is just basically running some warm water over the produce. Not hot, not too hot. This is what you're going to scald it. Some warm water that's going to control any microbes on the fruit, and it controls the mango seed beetle inside the fruit. Certain markets require that in the US, they require it before you actually ship it to them. See the blanket is basically putting some food on some boiling water for 1 to 3 minutes, depending on the size of the ship. It's not water at 100 degrees. Okay? Fruits and vegetables are alive until being harvested. So once the fruit is on the tree, it's alive. Once harvested, it's dead. And once it's dead, it starts to produce an enzyme. That enzyme is called ethylene. That's a naturally producing enzyme from any fruit and vegetable. And what it does, it enables ripening, but it also causes deterioration. So what is your job is to reduce the production of ethylene. Because you want ethylene going to increase the ripening and going to increase the bricks, the sugar content, but you want to reduce that. You don't want it to escalate too fast, because if you get it too fast, the fruit going to get to the market right before you want it. So you have to be able to reduce the production of ethylene. Sometimes people, ethylene is actually a gas now that they create, and they use that in the banana industry. So what they do, they pick the banana grain, ship it out, and just before it gets to the market, they apply ethylene. So what it causes is uniform ripening. Everybody will ripen together because they apply ethylene to the product. Because we're using banana industry. The dominant is using banana industry. Actually, what they actually do is create that gas in a chamber, in a lab. The other guys is naturally producing, but they create it so they can use it when they want, for their purpose. So to create uniform ripening.
So it's not harmful, it's not harmful.
No, ethylene is naturally producing it, not harmful. packaging. We talk about packaging. Packing is very important to post-harvest management because you want to control and maintain the physical and the quality of the fruit. Because if it's damaged during transporting, you get losses due to improper for the marketplace. So you want to make sure you package it properly to get to the market with good quality and you can maintain your expected price. Because if it goes to the market damage, the price is going to drop. And nobody, the farmer don't want to hear that. So it's his job to make sure you package the fruit or the package properly to get to the market where you can maintain a certain quality so you can get the price. That's very good. Okay. Any questions on post-harvest management? But the important thing is getting the fruit from the farm to the market at the least possible time and the best quality you could get it out. That's the only way you could maintain your expected price. If it's damaged, you get reduced price. And one thing in Anguilla, we only know A grade. That's all we know in Anguilla, A grade. We don't know about the B grade and the C grade. When you go to markets around the world, there's always an A, B, and a C grade. But in Anguilla, only A grade we know. Because the farmers only think that only A grade we could take to the supermarket. Because we never introduced them to B and C. But if you put C and they have a different price, they would sell it. Because instead of somebody paying $6 a pound for tomatoes, they get $3, they would buy it. But the farmer wants maximum profit. That's why you only introduce A grade. But there's a profit of everything. That depends on how you market. Questions?
Another question. Here in Anguilla, well, the old days, people used to save the peas and put them in a bag. But they noticed that they get bags, and they used to use something called penicillin push. I don't know if you're aware of it.
Penicillin push, yes.
How effective is that?
What actually does it actually acts as a repellent to prevent the blast from coming. You could use the neem the same way, it's the same purpose.
Yeah, but the back is in the bee.
No, but what happened with bats in the business is that's not a bad business, it's a little beetle, a coleoptera, borrowing swing where the bee and it eats the inside of the bee for a couple of years. So what we want to do is to prevent it from going there from in the first place. So if you spray the trees in the field, you control that beetle.
So what you're saying is you got to put the bees or save them. You spray the bag with the bees?
No, you spray before you harvest because it's already there, you know. The pest is already there in the bees when you pick it. But you don't know it's already there. If you look at it, if you can spray the bees properly, you see a little small hole. I mean, the pest is already on the inside. So when you sow it, you think it's go there, they go there, it's there all the time.
And what about the calm? I know people used to put it in a bag and throw sand over it.
Trying to prevent the pest from going down through the sand. That would work too because you actually prevent them from going in. But one of the easiest thing to do with a corn is just get some neem bush, put it between them, there's nothing in the trouble.
You put it in a bag or something about it and put it in
Put a neem bush, yes. We used to use it back home in the poultry industry. You put it in the layer span, and there's no little plastic called nibble. Once you put that, there's a little light. Once you put it there, you won't get nothing. So that's a repeller, it keeps them out. And the nibble basically a little light that sucks the board. Yeah, but once it's staying in one place, it's going to start to suck them. So once you use the repeller, it actually prevents them from coming.
So if you have any seeds or anything that's for people in a cool place?
Well, seeds is different. You want to store seeds in a cool, dry place, preferably in the fridge. Why? Because they want to maintain the fertility of the seed, because of the viability. If if you store them outside and it's too hot, the seeds loses viability. And then when you think you got 10 seeds, you only get 2 germinate because the germinate percentage will drop considerably. So you have to make sure it's store them in a cool place and then maintain its viability. And next thing, that's why we store them in the fridge. All our seeds are in the fridge now because once you store them in the fridge, you maintain a certain temperature. And the seeds go dormant at that temperature. So you won't lose its viability as considering the outside of the meat. And I mentioned this morning, one of the ways to help the break the dermis a little faster is before you plant the seeds out. Overnight, just put with some little warm water, and then you plant the next seed. Actually, you're breaking the dermis in the seed, so you will plant. It will germinate much faster once you do that. We do this especially with beans and corn. Soak it overnight, and then next morning you can plant. Within 2 days you get germination. We call it cheating, but it works. Yeah, warm water. Now, you don't have to be in fact, it could be start with like 28 or 30
You still always soak peas, whatever you got there. Go around whatever, still help me, check out the
Yeah, we do the breaking the dermis, just like breaking the dermis.
So okay, so when I get it, yeah.
Yeah, because when you put the plant, it's taking that moisture, and then it's going to split, and then it's going to split. And then because once more, it's only hypergene, it's pretty costly, and the plant is starting to it's just breaking the dermis.
With that, I know you can work for me with weight. With weight, I've tried talking before.
Okay.
I work on strawberries.
I never plant strawberries, so I wouldn't be able to say anything with strawberries, but I know for sure for like okra, corn, beans, beans, so you get good results.
I do strawberries.
Okay.
But initially when I got on board, just started the school in the ground and we had it. But since that chocolate, they used to go out in the sea after I was growing strawberries. And I tried those and they don't work, so I should try soaking them.
But maybe the seeds are not viable after they see brilliant because maybe they buy it from a supplier who had it for a long time, so maybe the viability is gone. So you gotta be careful when you buy sometimes. I only try to buy seeds that they put the germination percentage over 85%. Once all 85% I don't buy it because I don't want the farmers come and complain and harass me and say, Roach, my seeds didn't germinate. I don't want that. So I try it. It's a little bit expensive. I try to get seeds with a very high germination percentage. And a very good purity also. Anything over 98% purity, anything over 85% germination, I buy. But I can't vouch for all the seeds that I have people bringing into the island because I know what was the source of that seed, so I can't say. But I get some complaints, but I can't tell them what to do. Any other questions? Shane, you came in a little late.
No, I was following on.
So like, what some other persons do to the Caribbean as well in terms of the whole coast harvest, especially to maintain moisture, you have like cassava, for example, they tend to coat them with wax. So you see that a lot when they coat them in wax. Things like yams and sweet potatoes, you will see that they will put them in like newspaper, that type of material and wrap them. So it helps to prevent moisture loss. Sometimes your goods get shipped from one area to the other market, you still have some good quality products and stuff. So that's something that can be done.
The more expensive side of it.
Yeah, the imported fruits and vegetables, what I've noticed that like apples, they are very shiny. Whether there's wax or something like that, is that harmful?
Yes, sometimes they have the wax on the apples.
Is that harmful to the consumption?
No, it wouldn't be anything harmful at the beginning. It wouldn't be anything harmful. But I always try to use more the local stuff. I try to avoid going to buy apples and grapes and stuff in the shop. I wasn't growing up on those stuff, so I avoid it. So I don't use my children those. We just use what we have around here. It's fine. And I don't say go in with anybody else. So I'm probably not good to say it, but I don't support it. I try to use more than local stuff. But I want anybody to try this. Try a local tomato as compared to one that is imported. Put it on the countertop and see which one stays down. Anybody that experiment?
I do an experiment right now.
You doing it right now?
4 weeks still go.
4 weeks. That's what you want to promote. You want to promote the local stuff. Because it got a much better fiber content. That means it stays much longer on the shelf. As compared to the imported one who goes on the hydroponic, it's more water, so it collapses much faster.
Yeah, but it's still form, not over red, not soft.
Because it's growing in the fields, it has higher fiber content, so the shelf life is much longer.
And sweeter as well.
It builds food because our conditions, because it's dry, so compared to Anguilla being dry, it's one of the best conditions for growing saladaceous crop because they don't like too much water. As compared to down rigor, they have to try to put plastic on the greenhouses to keep the water out. We want to keep the sunlight out. They want to keep water out. As they get too much rain, crops don't like it because they're all kind of fungal growth, bacterial spot. So many diseases they get because they don't know what they get. So we're in a prime position to grow those stuff. And it's much sweeter. Even pumpkins from Anguilla, very sweet as compared to that liquor. It goes down with much more water.
But I noticed, I haven't seen the local pumpkin this year. No, but I seen about the pumpkin.
They don't have a fruit pumpkin, lychee and gummy have some pumpkins.
Well, they use the drip system.
Yeah, they use the drip system. They got drip system. They got drip system. I brought in some drip tape for them. It was some 5 feet drip tape. And they use it. And the crop will be better, but the space is right. They try to, it was a small area of planting them. They try to cram in too much plants for the year, so they don't want to take up the numbers.
With tomatoes, sometimes you see right at the end a brown spot or something. What causes that? Lack of rainfall or something?
No, most of the time that is let's blossom in rock, which is basically a calcium deficiency, which is a lack of water. Water is not moving through the plant as it should. So you get a kind of black spot in the fruit. It's blossom in rock.
So how do you counter that?
You just by increasing the water. He shouldn't have a problem the other day. Increase the amount of water the plant gets. Most of the time, we get the time to go water our plants in the afternoon. Plants need a water in the morning because the plant will go through that sunshine all day. So you want to make sure that I put amount of water in the morning to withstand the week during the day. So if you do that, if you don't get that water in the morning, the plant will go through some stress. There's no movement of water. And once no water is moving while the plant is fruiting, you get calcium deficiency. And then the blossom and rot. So the plant doesn't take that water in the morning.
So tell me, is it best to water plant in the morning or in the
Yes, it's much better to water in the morning. You put small bit in the evening, but in the morning is more important. The plant needs them because I don't withstand all the heat. After the stress of the day, they want to avoid the plant built in during that time. So it's best to put the water in the morning time. I told Shane this to you all day too. Yes. You want to avoid the plant going through any stress.
I remember some years back home, they would say that it is better to water plants in the evening because in the morning that dew that comes down on the plant is good for the plant. And so they say when you water the plant, you wash away the dew, the goodness. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's an old saying. That's an old saying. Some of the things that I learned back then, there's no correlation today. It's all different now. There are technologies and physiologies of the plant.
You can anything for it now. You can anything for it
That's
now.
how you want to do right now. Yeah, so it's better to water them in the morning. The science is proven that water them in the morning prevents that stress during the daytime. It's going to help the plant to withstand and continue growing as compared to if it dries out and starts wilting, it starts to go through a stress period. And the plant don't want to go through a stress period. Are you restricting good but to go through any stress? So it's recommended to water it in the morning, especially if you have those plants that put in a lot of moisture, like the tomato, the cash crops, you want to make sure you give them water all the time. Tomatoes, cabbage, peppers, eggplants. Eggplant are in some drought conditions, but still need water, especially the hybrid ones, they need water. Quality ones, they're going to be fine, but the hybrid ones, the cells are growing so much, that's certification, they need water.
I've been trying pineapples. I consider myself a water tree. So, for the time, because I'm rocking in the middle, I'm trying to rock.
The type of rot?
Yeah, and you put up with these, but
Because the water going into the the water's getting into the crown of the pineapple. It should.
so water
The water needs to stay on the outskirts.
Because pineapple is a plant with well-drained soil also. So why we only plant pineapples up then there is in sand. So there's no water going to pass in sand. So it doesn't need water anyway in the ground. The water got to be anyway on the roots. We plant it in sand. It's sand, and it's plant in sand. Pineapple is one of the weirdest plants in the front. Each one of those little eyes of the pineapple is a flower. So a coalition of flowers actually give you the fruit. So it takes a very long time to actually mature. Now it could go to 18, 20 months sometime before you get a nice decent fruit. There's some varieties that mature a little earlier, but most of the time it's 18, 20 months, 2 years. Then the raccoon crop will be shorter because that's just growing from another plant. So, but from the initial one, you need two years before you get a it's a very fun plant.
I was also told that if there's a food itself, there's a seed. And I really couldn't can't find a
It's a little tiny black seed. It's a little tiny black seed.
Oh, where do you find that?
It's just on the skin. There's a little black seed right there.
Oh.
I'm not sure if it grows out of that black seed, but I know for sure there's a little black seed. Just on the skin.
Because those things that plant it's much more simple than, you know?
Yeah, but if you have the patience and you can keep the roots moist but not water out to the crown, it should grow. We had a guy here, Robbie. He grew pineapples. Is that a crop I want? It takes too long.
Which I remember years back in the day, and I was just sitting on the Rick Lane School that I there. I remember this guy, he's a plant. He had acres and acres and he could go, and as far as I could see pineapple. But he had a tablet.
Yeah,
At a certain stage,
you gotta put it in
you drop the tablet inside the plant.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the methods they used to
Juice right from
speed up.
to hasten the right. It's a tablet. It's basically a hormone they use in pineapple production to actually hasten the process. Yeah. Now you buy somebody acres of pineapple and those bottles should put in the tablet. And there's a plant that cuts it, there's a little spine and stuff. So you might go through acres of that doing that. Time to consume. I don't plant kind of.
The plant pineapple and peanuts.
Yeah, that's not a time consuming, I gotta shake it. Even the rice, you can remember those guys sowed acres of rice by hand. Acres of talking about. You got like 100 guys like across and everybody just walking and so. And they do this effortlessly, but they used to do it. Put you to do it, it would take a whole year. These guys effortlessly sowing acres and acres of rice by hand. That was amazing to see. when they spray it now, they use airplane. But when they plant it by hand. Imagine. But you spray by airplane. Because acres we did it. Yeah, the car spray plane, the sky lines just come in, just swoop down, spray, back, spray. So within a half an hour, they're done, 5 acres of land, and it's scary and spray. Any other questions?
Yeah, one other thing. Plants. I noticed that the green ones seem to grow better for me. Because the black beauty, I had something that stunted. Not even that high.
Maybe you have a bad batch. But I also told you the kind of dark area you plant in, it's on a slope. So when you irrigate, the water runs away from the slope. So you try to control the land somehow to be able to trap some of the water when you plant. Because every time you plant, the water just goes down the slope. And that's a difficult thing to plant on the slope and maintain some moisture. And if you was watering the drip irrigation system, and you have constant water by erosion, plant will do much better. But if you come and sporadically water, just throw in the evenings, I don't think that's doing the plant any justice. But I just tell you, and because of what the topography of the land in our city, it's very difficult on that slope. And the soil is not enough. You don't have a lot of nutrition in that soil either. So it's always an uphill battle, or you go downhill to get nutrients back in the soil and get plants growing. So I recommend you use some manure, try put in the area, and then prepare the soil, and then try planting again.
Yeah, I got another piece over there by the road, but I can't plant the vegetables, so they only get in it.
Yeah, you just plant enough, you get some of them.
Yeah, I got some trying to read them.
Yeah, but you get some, they get some, because not enough. Or I didn't allow you to fence it. But if you plant, let's say you plant a quarter acre of tomatoes, they won't still happy. You get some, you get some. Every month will be fed.
Yeah. But the biggest problem I got the fowls.
Yeah, that's
trying to
a big problem.
control the fowl, you got unintended consequences, turn up, boy, eating and.
You did control some of those too, sorry to say.
Right?
You did control some of those too.
But the turn up.
Yeah, they became a pest now, you can't plant the car anymore. Exactly.
Yeah, but I don't know, but I haven't been able to get a non-running at all.
Yeah, because it's turned out the national board now, so they eating the guinea corn, so you can't.
Yeah, but I got planned for the past 3 years and some of them didn't spin up. 1 or 2 for them, I had a nice year of guinea corn, grip, then come down and then after the give it to me afterwards.
Who got it?
Drip! It's a fella in our
Yeah, but what you should do is take it to plant back.
No, he doesn't plan to get a car. He doesn't plan to sell it to the agent shop.
From you, he was very good. He gave him back to you.
No, he just told me about when he didn't give it to me.
Yeah, you get some of those. You get some of those.
But this was a sharp, short one thing.
Oh, they do sell variety. All right. I would say it was good to see you guys come out this afternoon. We should hopefully get some more, but hopefully next time we get some more.
Yeah, only one thing I would like to say is good, but I would prefer I get a visit note again from the agriculture department to tell me what's going on.
I could come by a little more often, Mr. Buchanan, but you got to start by getting some manual around your ground and some stuff. I was telling the guys this morning, sorry, all the bank account. All we need is the top level nutrients. All we need is some nutrients. So the more you put in, the more you're going to get out.
But I use a lot of wood manure. But then you get Kushal.
You got all kind of things in wood manure. Whatever wood eat, you get pumps red, you get Kushal. So.
What I can suggest to what I do, all my feelings from my kitchen, feelings of vegetables, everything, I put them back into the ground.
But I try to come to see, but dogs and frogs going scatter down all the time.
You got some best about you.
Dogs and frogs, every day scatter because I do it and I know that later, he said within 6 weeks he has compost.
I need to go by him.
Yeah. But before the dog, let it stay with
I know that's the problem.
Well, I said on behalf of, I hope I'm not speaking of place, but on behalf of the farmers, I would like to say thanks to both of you, wrote, particularly for the presentation and everything. Very helpful. I'm sorry that more was going here. But we shouldn't give up hope. We can have it again.
Yes, we could do it again. No problem.
Okay, I have to get a case exit. Thank you.